So you want to put together a women's retreat and you want to make it transformational and intense without being cheesy or predictable. Keep watching. Running a women's retreat is one of the most satisfying and rewarding experiences that I've ever had. Now, the challenge though is to not be cookie cutter, is to create something that is truly transformational, that really delivers an intense and deep experience. At least that's what I'd like to do every time I run a women's retreat. So I want to share with you some of what I've discovered about how to deliver an amazing experience in a women's retreat. So the first thing to think about and consider is who's coming to this retreat. Who are the women? Are they younger? Are they older? What are their pain points? What are their problems and their challenges? What's bringing them and causing them to want to gather and do this immersive experience together? Are these clients? Are these friends? Do they share a religion in common or a common belief system? You really want to examine and know who's coming to this event and what they want and what they need. And then from that place of really understanding who they are, what they want, and what they need, designing the experience from there. So there are certain different categories that I like to think about when I'm putting together a retreat so that I can get a good mix of different types of experiences. The first category is the mind category, the mental category. What I've found, especially if this might be a new group of people getting together for the first time, if they don't know each other, if they are maybe a little hesitant or uncertain about why they're there, what they're doing, I found that the easiest way to get started is with opening their mind and creating some sort of experience where they can learn something new that's conceptual. I find that this works really well in this culture that we live in this society, because so much of what we do, school, college, university, education, all these personal development things that help us learn and grow they usually start with the mind, with some sort of conceptual model or framework. So what I would do if I were creating a brand new retreat for women is I'd open it up with some sort of learning or some sort of framework or some sort of new perspective that can open their mind. And then once the mind is open, the next category that I look at is the body, right? Is opening up and getting the body engaged, right? Because when the mind is open and engaged and then the body is open and engaged, then we can start to open up to even deeper, more meaningful experiences. So what that might look like, if once you've presented that framework and given them something to think about, maybe have a physical activity that is related to that conceptual model. So I'll give you an example. I did a women's retreat, and the whole purpose of the retreat was to help women calm down and relax and settle in and get present. So in the opening, we did the conceptual model about presence, about how our mind gets so caught up in the day-to-day rigmarole of life and how we disconnect from the present moment because we're thinking about the future or we're worrying about the past. So this was the conceptual model that we opened with, and then we had a discussion so that people could share their different perspectives and share how they're challenged in their current life. Then we decided to do the physical piece. So we decided to go on a hike, a very simple hike. It was about 2 hours. And on that hike, we challenged everyone to stay present the entire hike. Now, what that meant was they couldn't talk about the future and they couldn't talk about the past. The only thing they could talk about for those 2 hours was what was right here, right now. The tree, the rocks, the view, the fresh air, the breeze, the sun, the temperature, and just for 2 hours. Now, first of all, this was really challenging for people. It might sound simple to you, but it gave people an immediate physical experience of the conceptual model that we'd been talking about. It allowed them to say, oh my gosh, notice how often I try to go off into the future. Notice how often I go and try to talk about the past. Notice how I don't stay present very easily. So this was a huge awareness for people right at the front end of a 3-day weekend retreat, all about presence. So think about how you can create a conceptual framework and then have a physical experience for them to embody that framework. Once you've opened people up in their mind and gotten their body engaged, the next step is to open up their emotions, their heart. When we can open up people from their emotions, we can go a lot deeper and the bonds become a lot stronger with each other. But we can't just jump into the super emotional stuff from the get-go. We want to work our way there by going through this process. So mental, physical, and now emotional. The emotional part is where people might have self-discoveries that are related to their feelings, maybe their subconscious mind, maybe stories from their past or resentments that they're hanging on to. So for example, one way that we've done this is we've created rituals. So we've had people write down, for example, something that really bothers them or offends them or they've struggled with emotionally, like anger, resentment, fear, shame, frustration. And then we have a conversation about that, or we'll discuss that, and we might do that in small groups, since getting naked emotionally can be very challenging for some people. So that's something you might want to do in a smaller group, and that's where the format comes in. But then from there, we've done rituals where they'll write down the thing that they are letting go of, and then we'll have a ritual where we'll have a bonfire and everybody will burn their thing that they're letting go of in the bonfire. So that's like an emotional experience. Other types of emotional experiences, we've had hypnotists come in. We've had people who lead meditations into their childhood. We've done breathwork sessions with experts that come in and help people dive into those emotions in their physical body. Now, keep in mind, it's not like mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, like these things are all separate. They're all connected. So the more pieces that we can bring in, the more true the transformation we can create in one of our retreats. Which brings me to the next piece. So another part of this might be for you, and it might not be, feel free to discard this if this doesn't work, is the spiritual component. If the kind of retreat you're running has any sort of spiritual component, then once you've started to open up all these other pieces, that would be a really good time to bring in something like energy work or prayer or something that helps people connect to a divine, to the divine, to their own internal divine source, to the universe, to God, something greater than what's just here and present in the concrete world. Once you've gone through all these different layers, the people are ready for something deeper. They're ready for something greater. And this is the best way that I've found to deliver a really powerful experience, is to weave all these things together. So as you're weaving together all these different things, one angle that's throughout everything is the social piece. There's nothing like a women's retreat for bonding and for sisterhood. And so this social angle, you can bring it in throughout by doing the activities and the exercises, the mental, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, by doing them in groups of 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and also the big group as a whole. I highly recommend mixing it up so that people have a chance to bond in small groups, one-on-one, and in larger groups. And that creates different bondings across, all the different, you might have little cliques of women. Breaking up those cliques and having new bonds created is going to go a long way towards creating a new experience for people. Oftentimes, transformation comes from witnessing another person. It comes from being with someone who's completely different from you. So helping people to break those comfort zones and cross these new boundaries and creating new alliances and relationships is very transformational. One of the ways that we do this is through food. So what I've found is that we are so social and so connected as humans over food. It's something that we've ritualized over thousands of years. And so in your retreats, if you can create some really fun food activities or food rituals, I feel like you'll really see a lot more bonding and a lot more connections. So here's an example of one thing we did. We looked at these cooking shows and came up with a cooking competition. We grouped people in groups of 4 or 5. We gave them an envelope that said that they were responsible for a specific meal. So maybe it was a gluten-free dessert, or maybe it was a meat main dish, or maybe it was a vegetarian or a vegan main dish, or an appetizer. So we gave them an envelope and we gave them money, and we told them they had 3 hours to produce this meal. They could go to the supermarket, they could, they had to figure it out, getting where they needed to go. Some people had cars, some people Ubered, some people Lyfted, but ultimately they had this budget that we gave them, and that was all they had to produce this part of the meal. And so everybody was cooking and creating, and what we thought was that people were going to compete, but actually, because we had created such a beautiful culture in this retreat, people were supporting each other. We had people from one group giving a ride to the people from the other group to the supermarket, or lending money. They had $5 left over, they gave it to another group. So we saw some beautiful collaboration, which was part of the experience, like how to collaborate and how to work within a time constraint. So playing with the meals, instead of hiring a chef or spending a whole lot of money on food, is there a creative way that you can work the meals into the retreat experience? Now, obviously, you can also mix together some of these different things. Like you can mix together an emotionally transformational experience with a social experience. You can mix a physical experience with a spiritual experience. One of the things that we did is we did outside. We had a beautiful lawn one time at one of our retreats, and we did something called ecstatic dance, which I'm not going to get into, but you can look it up online. And that was, for some people, a very spiritual, transformational opportunity to move their body and commune with the divine. So you can play around with these things, have some fun. We've done talent shows, we've done karaoke, we've done all sorts of different fun things that bring together these different components. So the last thing that I just want to bring in is that it can be tempting to pack your retreat full of a whole bunch of different things and have every minute scheduled. And I highly, highly do not recommend doing that. I think it's really important, especially if you're doing deep inner work or emotional release work or spiritual work, to give people downtime to integrate the experiences, to give them time to go off on their own, to go walk in the woods, to go sit in the jacuzzi, whatever it is, but giving them time to integrate the experience. And one of the things that we do is we also invite and encourage people to block out the day after the retreat for integration, so that they don't go jumping right back into their normal life, right back into the real world. So those are some of my best tips about how to create a women's retreat that's powerful and that delivers transformation. If the idea of running women's retreats or any kind of retreats appeals to you, this is what I do. Go ahead and download my Retreats to Riches roadmap to understand how to build and monetize transformational small group experiences. Enjoy.